From a student faking cancer and scamming thousands of dollars through a fraudulent GoFundMe campaign, to the singer-turned-pedophile who ended up getting stabbed to death in prison, these are the worst, most evil people that Penguinz0 exposed. Starting with Evil Wife. Melody Feliciano Johnson, the woman whom Charlie had dubbed the Evil Wife due to her nefarious poisoning plan, which Charlie described as such.
It's got an evil wife, and let me tell you, she's a real battle axe, and she's hatched a nefarious plan to poison her husband for life insurance money. Allegedly. I hate that I have to use the word here because the overwhelming amount of video evidence and everything makes it very clear that that's what was going on, but apparently you gotta say that word when talking about something like this. But anyway, that's not where the whole story stops because the husband becomes aware of it, but can't act on it right away, so has to continue to play along with the woman that's actively trying to kill him.
This entire case began in March of 2023 when Robbie, the husband, first started noticing that his coffee tasted bad while he and his wife were stationed in Germany as part of the US Air Force. Initially, he didn't think much of it and continued to drink the coffee for the next 2 to 3 weeks. But eventually, he bought pool chemical testing strips, which indicated that his coffee pot had high levels of chlorine. That's when his investigation started, and he set up cameras that revealed the deadly recipe his wife was preparing for his daily coffee.
The man, quote, suspected someone was tampering with his coffee, and in May 2023, while still in Germany, he set up a camera in his house. The husband alleged his wife used bleach as a form of poison, storing the chemical under the sink.
Charlie tried to imagine what could have been going through the victim's mind before and after the revelation.
I don't know if he immediately suspected it was his wife. Maybe he thought there was some kind of like burglar coming in to fuck with him and pour bleach into his coffee pot or something. I don't know if he immediately started to point fingers at his wife. I imagine he probably did, because I mean, who the fuck else is gonna break in there and pour coffee or pour bleach into the coffee? Unless it's like the Tooth Fairy out for revenge or something. So I don't know how surprised he was to see that, but I still imagine that that was traumatizing to know that the person that you are married to, the person that is the most important person in your life, is actively trying to kill you.
However, the act of poisoning itself wasn't even the most heartbreaking part about this story. In order to bring his evil wife to justice in the United States, not Germany, the victim continued to pretend to drink the coffee, fully knowing that his wife would continue poisoning him until they were able to get back to the United States in June that same year. Here's what Charlie had to say about that situation.
This is such an interesting conundrum. So he didn't want to make the report while in Germany, and continues to fake drink the coffee, playing a game of pretend here, and then also, I assume, pretending that everything's okay in the marriage between them, even though he knows in the back of his head, his fucking wife is trying to kill him. And his wife doesn't know that he knows, so she continues to make attempts to poison him. When I try and picture this situation in my head, I immediately just start thinking about the movie Mr. and Mrs. Smith, but without, like, the guns. So instead of, like, dumping lead at each other or shooting at each other, it's his wife really insisting on trying the coffee. A new recipe, perhaps. So, and he's just like, oh, this is good, very good, but he knows.
Sure enough, by the time they were back in America, Robbie managed to get more footage of her actively poisoning him from different angles.
The family returned to the United States and was stationed at an Air Force base in Tucson, Arizona. At that point, additional cameras were set up. Video captures Feliciano Johnson pour something into the coffee pot and look over her shoulder to see if anyone is watching.
But as dark as this entire story was, Charlie had a rather imaginative scenario in his head.
I also can't help but wonder if he tried to, like, mess with her a little bit. Not trying to poison her, obviously, but, like, make her believe that the poison was working. Like, did he start faking a sickness or something? Did he start, you know, making it seem as though he was falling ill in order to see how she'd respond? Like, he just, you know, puts a thermometer in his mouth and he's, like, looking real pale and he's like, oh, babe, I don't know what's going on. I'm not feeling too good. Making a bunch of, like, coughing noises to see how she reacts to it, to try and catch her with, like, joy in her eye that her plan is working. Or if he just simply kept drinking this, or pretending to drink the coffee, and his wife must have thought that he was f***ing immortal, just legitimately immune to poison. Which is a pretty scary thought, and pretty concerning considering he lived with her and went through this for over a month now, with someone actively trying to murder him. And if she really thought that bleach had no effect on him, like he was just built different, bleach doesn't work, I just would be worried that she'd try other things that maybe he didn't pick up on, or wouldn't have picked up on if it continued, you know what I mean? But anyway, He gathered all of this evidence and then he brought it to the authorities.
Though for obvious reasons, many online saw this reality as much grimmer, commenting, "To realize your own wife not only betrayed you but wants to take your life, and to then put on a poker face for a month and pretend like everything is fine, takes some insane emotional maturity or resilience. I hope that guy is still able to trust because he deserves better." Now at first, authorities could not follow up on his report, as in the video, you could not clearly see what she was pouring into the coffee maker. But after setting up additional cameras at home in the guise of fire alarms, he eventually captured overwhelming proof of his wife's evil deeds.
Johnson was caught on camera multiple times, appearing to pour bleach in the laundry room, walking it into the next room, and then pouring it into the coffee maker.
Melody was arrested soon after authorities officially verified the victim's claims.
Feliciano Johnson was arrested on July 18th.
And her bail was set at $250,000 after her arrest, as authorities had specifically requested a high bond because she was considered a flight risk. Almost a year later, in April of 2024, Melody pleaded guilty to 2 counts of adding poison or a harmful substance to food in a plea agreement, where she was sentenced to face up to 2 years in prison along with probation. At sentencing, Melody's attorney claimed that Robbie Johnson, her husband, was abusive and had alleged instances of alcohol abuse. There hasn't been confirmation on whether this was actually true, and not many believe the statement, as the judge stated that the victim asked the court to sentence Melody to probation and mental health treatment. In fact, most people online simply didn't take the sentencing well, with one person writing, "It shouldn't matter if the husband wants her to go to jail. She did this maliciously and tried to kill him. Putting her on probation is just letting her do it again to the next guy. What happened to people actually getting into trouble for their crimes?" And many others criticized the justice system, calling it a joke, or openly lashed out at it. But while Charlie didn't have much to comment about Melody's sentencing, he had a lot more to say about the next one. The evil TikToker star faked having cancer and exploited a GoFundMe campaign, all to apparently get her family back together. The evil TikTok star finally got caught.
In order to survive, I have to fight like hell. The 5-year outlook of survival is a slim 11%. 11%.
This woman is Madison Russo, a 19-year-old girl from Iowa who told the world she had pancreatic cancer, leukemia, and a tumor wrapped around her spine. As news spread about her arrest, people began realizing all the signs that she had been faking it were there, with someone even wondering how she claimed 3 different primary cancers with nobody questioning it. However, at the time, most people did not doubt her in the slightest, proven by all her quote-unquote achievements outlined by Charlie during her cancer journey.
She faked cancer, eventually started getting public speaking gigs, I suppose. She documented her battle with it in an attempt to uplift people, I suppose. She also made a GoFundMe which collected $37,000, which turns this whole thing from just a complete fabrication for the sake of attention, possibly, into a full-blown scam where she was taking money from people under a complete lie.
The public speaking gigs that Charlie mentioned included being interviewed by publications like the North Scott Press, and being a guest speaker at St. Ambrose University, the National Pancreas Foundation in Chicago, and on a podcast for Project Purple. She had a well-established publicity presence, and by the time she launched her GoFundMe, over 400 people actually felt bad and wanted to support her, raising more than $37,000. After all, she was seen as this 19-year-old girl who somehow kept a positive smile amid her battles, and was optimistic enough to refer to her central line as a new friend, shouting "F you" to cancer face on as she advocated that she was what cancer looks like.
What an incredibly evil thing to lie about. Now, of course, she's far from the only person on the cyberspace to lie about having cancer. In fact, there was a really recent story I just talked about a month ago about a poker player who lied about having terminal cancer in order to raise money to enter a poker tournament. But anyway, back to Madison. So she posted a lot of update content going over what was happening, and this includes photos that she would take. Photos that she would stage, since she didn't actually have cancer. So I'll show you a picture of it here, which is this. And a lot of medical professionals saw this and noticed that there was some very fishy shit going on here. It was starting to raise some red flags, sound the alarm bells that, this may not be a case of her having cancer, but instead an undiagnosed case of terminal clout disease.
By January of 2023, just months after Madison gained a sudden wave of clout from her supposed cancer, witnesses claiming to have medical experience said they noticed many medical discrepancies in Russo's social media posts and contacted authorities. Since she had already solicited thousands of dollars by this point, the police immediately acted on the report.
It got the attention of the Eldridge Police Department, and they conducted an investigation, eventually subpoenaed for medical records from Madison, and found that she'd never been diagnosed with any kind of cancer or tumor from any medical facilities. So it turns out her cancer diagnosis is about as real as Goat Man, which is to say, not real at all. Sorry to all the Goatman enthusiasts out there. I don't mean to burst your bubble. I know it's a tough pill to swallow, but it is what it is. He's not real. But what is real is this mugshot right here.
But faking her own sickness wasn't the only vile thing Madison did. She also managed to stomach stealing literal cancer patients' images and even using their stories to further fuel her fake sick persona.
She was posting other photos that weren't hers, apparently. She would use photos from actual cancer patients and post them as if they were her updates, which is unbelievably evil. Like, the whole thing is so genuinely disgustingly evil, but like, to me, when I learned that portion of it, I couldn't believe just how low she sunk for this.
Though the most shocking part of the story is how light her sentence ended up being. When the news first broke out, early talks about her possibly getting 10 years in prison circled online, but due to her track record, she ended up only getting probation, which Charlie criticized.
Also, it was recommended that Madison not face prison time because she didn't have criminal history and had good grades in college, was employed, which made her less likely to reoffend. Which I think is a bunch of baloney. What a load of dirty barnacles. What do her good grades in college have to do with anything here and her ability to lie about having cancer again? No, she'll never do this again. Wait, look at her report card. She has an A in kinesiology. Obviously, she's not going to pull this stunt again. Don't be ridiculous. No prison time at all. She's learned her lesson. Just slap her on the wrist, send her home.
The judge sentenced Russo to a suspended sentence of 10 years. That means she won't go to jail unless she gets in trouble in the future, but it will go on her record.
And basically, she received probation, where as long as she doesn't do anything stinky again in the next 3 years, she won't go to jail. But if she does reoffend and do something bad, then she will. This is not something that is just some whoops-a-daisy mistake, kind of silly, stupid, quirky, dumb decision that a young person makes. It's not. This is a cold, calculated, evil plan that she did make like $39,000 from.
Charlie also couldn't help but mock her excuse, saying how it was such a flawed plan, even if it was legitimately her initial intention.
I didn't do this for money or greed. I didn't do this for attention. I did this in an attempt to try and get my family back together.
I saw a comment point something out pretty profoundly. It said her plan was to get the family back together, and it worked. They all came to court with her. And I was like, yeah, that's pretty accurate. She never said how the family was going to come back together, so, But I don't necessarily believe that. I feel like if the plan was to get the family back together, why the fuck are you making a GoFundMe and making money off of it, right? Plus, let's just assume that your nefarious plan you cooked up worked and your family all did come together to support you. It's absolutely going to crumble when you don't go to doctors to get your treatment, right? So if the family came together, they would immediately know that you are a lying sack of shit, because you would not be going to any of these treatment facilities, and they'd want to support you, right? So they would immediately know that something is wrong since you're not actually getting any treatment from any medical professionals. It doesn't make sense. So I don't think that was the real motive. That was just trying to weasel her way out of a very, very serious situation here, because she scammed people out of $39,000. Now, she was ordered to repay that money that was donated to her, which is good. So all of the people who donated money, I believe, got money back for it. So it's at least a nice conclusion for them. They didn't just lose out on that forever.
Before wrapping up the video, Charlie once again reiterated his disbelief at how light the sentencing was.
Overall, I think she got off pretty easy from this. Oh, I forgot to mention she has 100 hours of community service work, which, that's not exactly the harshest punishment here to fit the crime, if you ask me. To deceive people with a lie like this here and rake in $39,000 with people that believe they're supporting a cancer patient who's going through an incredibly intense battle is so sickeningly disgusting. And I cannot believe how light the sentencing on not only her case, but cases similar to this have been in the past.
And people in his comments also expressed their frustration about the outcome, with the top comments writing, "Her community service should be working with actual cancer patients so she can see how insulting what she did is." Though at the same time, people no longer believe that even such a type of punishment would truly change her, writing, "She doesn't have sympathy for actual cancer patients, or else she never would have done this. She's 20 and doesn't realize how serious cancer is and that people genuinely suffer from the horrible disease every day." And if we're talking about evil people who drained innocent people of their money, there could be no one worse than Kenneth Copeland, who claimed that donating to his ministry would bring divine divine blessings and financial miracles. This is what a real demon looks like. Kenneth Copeland founded the Kenneth Copeland Ministries in 1967, and since then, the pastor has amassed a whopping net worth of $760 million, living in a $7 million mega mansion with a $20 million private jet at his disposal. But Kenneth isn't just infamous for being one of the wealthiest pastors in America, preaching that giving money to his ministry brings direct spiritual blessings or salvation. Though he looks and talks felt almost reminiscent of the devil itself, making Charlie feature him in a video titled, "This is what a real demon looks like."
If I asked you to picture a devil, I think a lot of you would go to like him from Powerpuff Girls, like just that really classic red monster with horns. But in real life, that's not what a devil looks like. This is what it looks like. Kenneth Copeland. Kenneth Copeland is a preacher, evangelist, whom I've referenced many times in the past, that exploits religion for financial gain. He is extraordinarily wealthy by taking advantage of the people in his faith. And he does all of it with a smile on his face and an attitude that resembles just pure evil.
Charlie then goes on to do a walkthrough of the famous Inside Edition interview with Kenneth Copeland, which right away started with a banger exposing question.
Why have you said that you won't fly commercial? You said that it's like getting into a tube with a bunch of demons.
This was the statement that the interviewer was referring to.
You can't manage that today.
Right.
This dope-filled world.
Right.
And get in a long tube with a bunch of demons.
Right. That's exactly the
And
point.
it's deadly.
And it works on your heart. It really does.
Here's the first thing that Charlie noticed about Kenneth.
People like him, these evangelists or heads of mega churches that live a life of outrageous luxury financed off the backs of those in their congregation who are donating under the guise that it's going to help further their faith or help the church or something like that, when really all it's doing is enabling them to live a lavish lifestyle. It always just makes me sick to my stomach. It runs so counter to the Bible that I have no doubt in my mind they will likely be going to hell without God even giving them a consideration of entering the pearly gates up there. It is deplorable. It is just diabolical stuff.
Now the controversial pastor did try to reason why he had to fly private, but Charlie just wasn't buying it.
If I flew commercial, I'd have to stop 65% of what I'm doing.
Baloney. What a load of horseradish. You wouldn't have to stop 65% of what you're doing if you flew commercial. You can fly commercial and still reach all of the same places. You can fly commercial and still do all of the same work you've been doing. And it's not like you're doing important work, Kenneth. All you do is you're basically like this Dementor who sucks money out of everywhere he goes. That's not important work. You're just perverting Christianity to fit your own agenda of making as much doubloons as you possibly can accrue in this lifetime.
To make it all worse, Kenneth didn't just look devilish. He was literally acting like one the longer the interview went on.
Do you ever use your private jets to go visit your vacation homes, for example?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Again, getting back to the comment. You said that you don't like to fly commercial because you don't want to get into a tube with a bunch of demons. Do you really believe that human beings are demons?
No, I do not. And don't you ever say I did. We wrestle not with flesh and blood, but principalities and powers.
He was so close to letting the mask slip off his face right there in that moment. I really thought he was about to reach over and start strangling her like Homer Simpson to Bart. Like, he gets the finger out and he gets really stern and serious. That look that he gives her, that would strike fear in the hearts of anyone. His facial expressions are so exaggerated, he's like a Pixar character. The way that he's able to constantly have these wide range of emotions that he conveys like that. The way he flips from infuriated to like smiling at her in the creepiest way possible, it's alarming. Everything about this guy should be sending you into a fight-or-flight response.
To no surprise, none of the excuses Kenneth gave about why he refused to fly commercial and why he believed his wealth was justified ever convinced Charlie or anyone else, such as when he made offensive remarks against commercial airline passengers.
If you go into the old covenant, do you think the Jewish people believe you should be broke?
Are you saying that Jewish people appreciate money more than... Really?
They believe in wealth.
Only for Charlie to quote scripture directly in response to the pastor's claims.
Because the Bible makes it clear in no uncertain terms that this house of worship should never be used as a place for like financial benefit for those involved. Jesus entered the temple courts and drove out all who were buying and selling there. He overturned the tables of the money changers and the benches of those selling doves. It is written, he said to them, my house will be called a house of prayer, but you are making it a den of robbers.
This interview ended with Kenneth suddenly praying for the interviewer despite offering zero substance.
Lisa Guerrero.
Lisa, God bless, Father bless Lisa today. Thank you for her grandparents. I love Inside Edition. I love the people on it. And it thrills me to get a chance to have my face on Inside Edition.
Thank you very much, Reverend. You have a nice day.
But all Charlie could focus on, even after that prayer, was,
I think that guy is evil. Everything about him is exactly what I would picture a demon on this earth disguising itself as. To a T. It's almost cartoonish.
Most people in Penguinz0's comments also reflected the same sentiment, writing, when he said, don't you ever say I did, I literally jumped out of my bed because this jump scared me genuinely. What the hell? Especially his gaze and facial expression when he said that is haunting. Very haunting. And even puns like, he doesn't pray, he prays. Unfortunately, Kenneth has never been charged under the law and still continues to enjoy a lavish $100 million lifestyle as a respected pastor in his religion. Though as evil as he looked and acted, there's arguably no crime darker than stealing a life while pre-recording a 6-hour live stream to serve as your alibi at the time of your murder. Most evil streamer ever, which was precisely what Stephen McCullough did. On December 18, 2022, Natalie McNally, who was 15 weeks pregnant at the time, was tragically found stabbed to death in her home. Investigation progressed quickly. Nearby CCTV immediately pointed out a suspect arriving and leaving the premises where the crime took place. And this man was quickly identified to be Stephen McCullough, who was later revealed to be the father of the unborn child. However, Stephen had a strong alibi, or at least, at first. He was live streaming during the time of the murder, not knowing that this very quote-unquote evidence he had for being innocent would backfire and lead to him getting the highest possible murder charge. For that, Charlie has dubbed him the most evil streamer ever.
And to my knowledge, this is the first case where a live stream was used as an alibi in a murder case or anything of that magnitude. There of course has been cases like with Facebook live streams and even YouTube a couple times where horrible atrocities were committed live, but I think this is the only time that someone has tried to use a live stream to prove their innocence and act as a smokescreen to cover up their crimes. He is a YouTuber as well as streamer. He mainly focused on toy reviews as far as I can tell, specifically seeming to be a big Doctor Who toy reviewer. So what happened is, on the night of Natalie McNally's murder, Stephen McCullough went live on his channel, and this live stream is still up right now. It's a 6-hour live stream. And this was crucial evidence to prove his innocence on this evening. Because how could McCullough have possibly killed someone when there's proof of him streaming from his home at the same time that the murder had taken place? So they eventually, after bringing him in initially on suspicion of being involved in this case, let him go, because this live stream did serve as a pretty good alibi for him. Plus, this wasn't just streamed to 0 viewers, there were real sentient human beings with a pulse there to watch this stream, so should any of this information ever come to light, there would be a lot of witnesses saying, no, I was watching him stream, he was 100% at home.
Right away, the investigation revealed 2 key truths for the authorities. On one hand, Charlie highlighted how there was an overwhelming amount of footage linking Stephen to the crime.
Because after the investigators combed through about 4,000 hours worth of CCTV footage, they kind of pinned his whole location. They got his whole itinerary here. They were able to track him around and follow him around like it was a fucking Sims character. So not only did they see him through the CCTV evidence, but they also have the account of the taxi driver. They even took notice of things like a yellow glove underneath a black glove while giving change to a bus driver. And with all of this, they had a really strong case against him being the murderer.
But of course, there was one hurdle for the police in arresting the man.
But they still had that live stream to explain, because again, there is a live stream that did span the entire course where all of this took place. So how the f does this happen? You know, is he David Copperfield? Like, what, 2 places at once? Is this some kind of prestige situation where he had like a twin or a clone of himself?
However, as meticulous as Stephen was in planning this live stream, there were, ironically, plenty of clues that this live is in fact not live at all. The first clue is the fact that he could not read comments, which Charlie thought he could have handled in a much better way.
So he mentions at the very beginning of this live stream that he's not going to be able to read chat for a variety of technical reasons. One of them being it would crash his computer, it'd freeze the computer, it'd ruin the whole stream because of all of these deep tech problems that he couldn't solve. Everything's gone cattywampus, so he won't be able to read your chat. More like, Doctor, who's talking? Because I can't see you, I'm not reading chat. He just keeps reiterating over and over and over again that there's going to be no chat interaction. Because obviously, since this is a pre-recorded thing, there is no chat for him to read or interact with.
Well, because this streaming software is kind of up the left, it means I can't check the live chat, which is a real shame. Can't look at the live chat for some bloody reason, because if I do, it makes the whole thing freeze and OBS just screws.
There's plenty of streamers who don't interact with chat, but to go this long and this in-depth on things that make absolutely no fucking sense whatsoever to explain why you're not going to be reading chat or reacting to donations is definitely a little odd.
The longer the video went, the more obvious it was that the stream was not recorded live at all.
He keeps reiterating that he's live, this is live, and he's staying inside all night. He talks about like drinking and driving, and he'd never drink and drive, which is why he's staying inside, drinking on stream live for his viewers to enjoy. He's playing GTA Vice City throughout the stream, and he's making comments about like how the police force is no longer like equipped to handle cases, and there's a rise in crime. It's in the real world he's talking about. It's all very alarming stuff.
Though Charlie had to pinpoint the creepiest part of this live stream, which not only hinted that he was in fact the murderer, but also showed he was so cocky about his entire plan.
But by far the scariest thing he says has to be this.
Yeah, that's physics. That's what would happen in the real world. Abso-fucking-notly. Abso-fucking-notly.
Completely out of nowhere, unprompted, he mentions someone named Natalie in a pretty menacing way. And once again, there's plenty of other things he says in here that are very scary, but I think this one is by far the worst moment.
Many people online also reacted how evil he seemed during this moment, writing, "I first thought him saying Natalie was a stretch, but it's like he realizes what he accidentally said and smiles in appreciation for the coincidence. Actually evil." And others were also disturbed about how confident he was about his plan, commenting, "The fact he mentioned her name in the live stream and also says the police can't solve files anymore shows he is proud for his job. He feels like a 100 IQ killer. That man would kill again if he does not end up in prison." However, to no surprise, some also called out how dumb his plan was in the comments, saying he probably thought he was a genius for pre-recording a video to fake a live stream for an alibi, but ultimately he set himself up for an inescapable first-degree murder charge because that is irrevocable proof of premeditation. After all, Charlie laid out exactly how this guy was caught, not just faking the live stream, but doing classic follow-throughs to check how effective his crime was.
This has been 100% confirmed beyond a shadow of a doubt to be a fake live stream. When authorities seized some possessions, they found the actual video itself and concluded that it was filmed on December 13th or 14th. And also, McCullough himself has confirmed that the live stream was not actually live, it was pre-recorded, but insists that he was actually just drinking by himself alone that night. He completely denies the murder and insists that someone else may have been dropped off in a taxi near his home. This is referring to the CCTV evidence that they've gathered, pinpointing all of his locations throughout the evening. There's also other awful shit here as well. McCullough stayed pretty close to Natalie McNally's parents, and in one case even left his phone over at their house in order to like bug them and secretly spy on them to record their conversations to see if he was a suspect. So McCullough went to the McNally house, left his phone on record, and left, but returned 40 minutes later claiming to have forgotten it.
Now when Charlie released this video, Stephen was still not charged with any crimes. But even then, Penguinz0 was already sure that he was guilty.
I can't envision a world where Stephen McCullough is not the person who committed this crime. There is just an overwhelming amount of evidence against him.
And he wasn't wrong. More than 3 years after the crime took place, Stephen McCullough was convicted in 2026, being sentenced for murder. That's when even more disturbing details about Stephen came to light, including the fact that 11 years prior to murdering his girlfriend, Stephen McCullough made a short film in which his character fantasized about murdering a woman. And that a month after murdering pregnant girlfriend, Stephen McCullough posed as a journalist and rang the SDLP's Mark H. Durkin, with sources recalling it was an attempt to find out if he was a suspect. Unfortunately, however, Stephen was not the only evil and ruthless figure willing to harm his partner and his own child on the list. Alex Murdaugh, a prominent law figure in South Carolina, and whose family has controlled the local prosecutor's office for 3 generations, was also exposed for murder murdering both his wife and son in a pathetic attempt to cover up decades of his financial crimes. Understandably, Charlie featured him in a video titled, "This Man is Pure Evil." Charlie first dug into the case when a fan asked about the murder case while on livestream.
So my dad just told me about that. I didn't know anything about it. And he was apparently embezzling money for a long time, a pathological liar, an oxy addict, and he snapped and killed his son and wife. Yeah, apparently the prosecutors had a video that the son had recorded that proved that Alex Murdaugh was lying about his whereabouts on the night of the murders. So I guess the story was they were killed at like the dog kennels on their property. Alex Murdaugh claimed that he wasn't there that night at the kennels, and he had like a couple alibis because they had his whole phone record. Apparently he called a ton of people to try and get a couple alibis. And eventually the prosecutors showed a video that his son had recorded literally minutes before he was murdered.
But as heinous as Charlie initially recalled the story, the full picture was much worse than he had anticipated. On June 7, 2021, Alex Murdaugh dialed 911 in what seemed to be a panicked state after he just got home and saw his wife and child shot multiple times near the kennels at around 10 in the evening. For his alibi,
My wife and child are shot badly.
he claimed that he left his house at approximately 9 p.m. to visit his ailing mother. However, investigators later found a video from Paul, the deceased son, that directly contradicted his alibi.
A video from his 22-year-old son Paul's phone taken just minutes before the prosecution says he was killed. That was just before 9 p.m. on June 7th, 2021. He pointed at Alex Murdaugh and said with 100% certainty he could hear his voice in the background of that video, and that contradicts Alex's alibi.
He was eventually found guilty of the crime. That was just a part of the entire picture. For the past decade, prior to the murders taking place, Murdaugh had committed financial crimes, including frequent diversion of client settlement funds as a personal injury lawyer, misappropriation of attorney fees, and perhaps the worst of his financial crimes was taking advantage of his late housekeeper's insurance settlement money in 2018.
In 2018, their housekeeper Gloria Satterfield allegedly tripped over one of their dogs and fell down the stairs and died at their hunting lodge. Alex Murdaugh then instructed Gloria Satterfield's sons to sue him for insurance money. However, he neglected to inform them that he had already collected on 2 settlements and basically robbed them of about $4.3 million from the insurance here. The man is just pure evil, just a shriveled, pruny, ghost-looking motherfucker whose entire bloodline seems cursed and is nothing but bad news. It is disgusting.
Alex Murdaugh got away unscathed from all these crimes. That was all about to change in February 24, 2019, when his boat crashed at a bridge near Paris Island in Beaufort County, South Carolina, killing 19-year-old Mallory Beach. 6 people were on board at the time, including Murdaugh's 19-year-old son, Paul, who was piloting Murdaugh's boat while intoxicated. This accident triggered a $10 million wrongful death lawsuit against Alex Murdaugh, but as he insisted he didn't have anywhere near that amount to pay the Beach family, the Beach family's attorney asked to subpoena Murdaugh's bank records.
Given the scale of Alex's financial crimes, discovery of his assets would have revealed years of Murdaugh's criminality. Later that same night, Alex allegedly found Paul and Maggie dead outside the kennels at the Murdaugh's sprawling hunting estate.
I'm really trying to break this down into the most concise form possible just to convey like the general story of the situation. But in a nutshell, years and years and millions upon millions of dollars of stolen money and financial crimes were about to be brought to light, all of which Alex Murdaugh was panicked about. So the main theory behind his motive for killing Paul and his wife Maggie is he needed some way of buying time to weasel his way out of this situation. I shit you not. The murder of his son, Paul, and wife Maggie, right now the leading theory is he did it for sympathy, to portray himself as a victim, and to basically just buy himself some extra time to get out of the situation because all of these financial crimes that had built up over years were about to be fucking blasted publicly. All of it was going to come to light. So that was his plan. Now, Paul was murdered before he ever stood trial for the death of Mallory Beach.
Though as insane as this all sounded, Charlie found Alex's planned exit to be completely hilarious.
But I'm getting a little ahead of the story because there was one other baffling situation that occurred involving a hired hitman that Alex himself hired to shoot and kill him so his other son could get his insurance money.
He hired his cousin Eddie to shoot
Yep.
so Alex's remaining son Buster could
get the
collect
life
on a
insurance.
$10 million life insurance policy. But apparently cousin Eddie wasn't up to the job because the gunshot
Good picture,
wound was
National
just a graze
Lampoon.
that temporarily blinded Alex. Eddie would also turn out to be Alex's
the fuck?
oxycodone dealer. Alex later admitted that
What
he
the
stole from his law partners and clients to fund his addiction to painkillers.
Was his plan actually to die? Like, did Alex Murdaugh hire cousin Eddie, goofball McGee, red-blooded patriot, wild maniac to come shoot him and kill him? That's wild. So his plan was actually to die. He said, "Come me in the head," and then he survived. He's like, "Damn it, time to change plan." A lot of things can be said about Alex Murdaugh, but God damn it, he gave it 110%. This man was ready to literally kill himself so that way his son could still have some fucking cheated funds. $10 million life insurance policy.
Charlie found some of Alex's actions almost funny, but he couldn't say the same about Ian Watkins, whom he called the most evil singer ever. Charlie was so disgusted by how Watkins had carried out over a decade-old crime that he felt compelled to break it down and show just how evil this man was.
But earlier today I saw a thread on Twitter going around listing the most evil artists and musicians of all time, and absent from the list was by far the most evil singer to ever hit the mainstream, Ian Watkins. And I was just shocked that not a lot of people seem to know about this. This was a story I followed as it unfolded back in 2012 because Ian Watkins was the frontman to my favorite band when I was a kid. If you're able to find any re-uploads of my old Gears of War montages from 2007 and 2008, you'll hear Lost Prophets music that they're set to and edited in sync with. I used their music all the time in videos growing up because I was such a massive fan, so you can imagine how fucking disgusted I was when I learned the truth behind their singer.
Watkins' crimes were so horrific that Detective Chief Inspector Peter Doyle said his investigation uncovered the most disturbing child abuse he had seen in nearly 30 years as a police officer. And here's what Charlie had to say about this statement.
And it's not an exaggeration. Ian Watkins was a serial child sexual abuser and even convinced some of his fans that were mothers to give up their kids to him to abuse, and would even convince the mothers to abuse their own children on video calls that he'd masturbate to. His sex crimes spanned years and even included the sexual abuse of a 10-month-old baby and attempted rape of a baby. Not only were his crimes some of the worst you could possibly imagine, but he was blatantly open about them as well. He'd even brag about fucking kids to some of his ex-girlfriends at the time. I feel like if the police officers had just asked him, "Hey, are you having sex with minors?" he would have hit them with a "hell yeah, brother," and then went up for a high five.
This brought Charlie to the grim reality surrounding his heinous crimes. All the evidence was there, but the police work was so terrible.
The whole story of Ian Watkins and his arrest is also the story of terrible police work from the department. There were years of reports and people desperately trying to get him behind bars, and they just wouldn't look at the evidence. They refused to look at all of the overwhelming evidence that was constantly being provided to them. The reason he ended up getting arrested was on unrelated charges, and they just happened to find this absolute mountain, like a goddamn Mordor. They wandered in there and happened to find all of this abuse evidence, but they were there for drug reasons and continued to turn the other cheek and ignore all of the reports coming from victims or people that had already compiled evidence and submitted it to them.
However, in September of 2012, his crimes could no longer be ignored when Watkins was arrested following a drugs raid in his terrace house in Pontypridd. Though all of this crime had already shocked and dismayed fans, weeks later, investigators found abuse images and videos on his computer hard drive, where even the password access clearly pointed towards his crimes. Initially, he furiously denied any wrongdoing and maintained not guilty pleas, but hours later he changed his pleas to guilty to all but one of the 24 charges he faced.
In court today, he was barely audible, offering guilty pleas to a series of horrific sexual offences, including the attempted rape of a boy who was just 11 months old.
Along with the parents of the very babies he sexually assaulted.
And in the dock beside him was the mother of that boy, as well as the mother of a little girl, both of whom pleaded guilty to helping the 36-year-old singer sexually assault their babies.
Charlie read some court transcripts concerning one of these parents, revealing just how heinous their active participation in Ian Watkins' crime was.
But you were a mother. Your infant was only 10 months old. A mother naturally loves, protects, shields, nurtures, and cherishes. Your infant would have trusted you implicitly. You betrayed that trust. What did you do? You had a detailed discussion with Watkins about the sexual acts to which the two of you are going to subject your infant. That's as far as I'm going to read, because then it goes into detail about what happened with Watkins, the mother, and that baby. And there is a video of it where they are abusing a 10-month-old baby, and it's described in detail in the sentencing remarks. It is horrific.
To no surprise, Charlie felt that his charges were nowhere near enough for the severity of his crimes.
Ian Watkins is a sick psychopath who's currently serving 35 years in jail, which isn't nearly enough for his crimes. And he's not remorseful about it either. Just read this quote here, where he said he did it for the mega-lols, talking about abusing and raping kids.
Perhaps he was not alone in feeling that way. In October of 2025, Watkins was killed in a prison attack, being stabbed to death at a prison in northern England. 2 years prior to this, he'd also been attacked at Wakefield Prison. Although his injuries at the time were not life-threatening, many people online rejoiced over this news, writing, "I'm normally the type to say something along the lines of don't celebrate, but holy F, this made my weekend," and even sharing memes about it. Of course, Charlie did not miss out on sharing his thoughts about the news as well.
But I do believe that the death of Ian Watkins here just saved a bunch of children in the future, because he was going to be released. He was going to be back out into society breathing the same air the rest of us do. And he point blank says that he found it to be mega-lols and showed no remorse or any kind of change or anything. So there's no doubt in my mind that when he would have been released, he would have went right back to doing this same shit, preying on children. So I do think now that he's dead in the dirt, going straight to hell, that children are safer for it, because he will not be released now out into the population to once again start preying on kids again.
If you enjoyed this type of Penguinz0 compilation, subscribe and suggest the next compilation down in the comments section.